Have you guys heard about the horrific story of Maddie Clifton? On November 3rd, 1998, beautiful 8-year-old Maddie Clifton went missing in her neighborhood in Jacksonville, Florida. Maddie asked her mom to go outside and play with some friends, but when she failed to come home for dinner, everybody was worried. Everyone in the neighborhood got together to search for Maddie in hopes to find her alive. 7 days later, on November 10th, Maddie's neighbor, Missy Phillips, runs across the street hysterically calling for police. Missy led police to her 14-year-old son's bedroom, and what she shows police next is super chilling. She explained to police that as she was cleaning her son's bedroom, she noticed that his waterbed was leaking, so as she pulled up his sheets, she saw Maddie's lifeless body laying in between the bed frame. Maddie's body was found partially clothed, bludgeoned with a baseball bat, and she was stabbed multiple times. Police quickly arrest Joshua Earl Phillips, and the story that he tells police is super disturbing. So he told police that Maddie came over to his house to play baseball and he accidentally hit her in the eye with the ball. Then he apparently took her into the house because she wouldn't stop crying, and as he dragged her in the house, her clothes came off. And then he hit her again with the baseball bat to get her to stop crying. So when his parents got home, he ran upstairs to check up on Maddie, and he noticed that she was still alive and moaning in pain. So instead of saving her, what does he do? He stabs her to death and shoves her in the bed frame. He slept in the same bed with her deceased body for 7 days, and he eventually got life in prison. This is what he looks like now.
432. In March of 1998, 23-year-old Virginia woman Amy Lynn Bradley was on a Royal Caribbean cruise ship to Curacao when she suddenly vanished from the balcony of her cabin around 6 a.m. The Coast Guard conducted a 4-day search in surrounding waters but found no trace of her, so authorities concluded that she simply fell overboard and drowned. But in the years since, there have been several reported sightings of Amy that suggest she may have been kidnapped and forced into human trafficking. 1 year after she went missing, a U.S. Navy sailor claimed he met a woman named Amy in a Barbados brothel who matched her description and begged him for help, but he didn't report it at the time. In 2005, an anonymous email was sent to Amy's family containing 2 photographs of a sex worker who closely resembled Amy, but nothing ever came of it. Despite various other sightings of the woman with men holding on to her, Amy Lynn Bradley was declared legally dead in March of 2010, 12 years after her disappearance.
In the McDonald's drive-thru when an argument would turn deadly. 37-year-old Stephanie McCrae was from Daleville, Alabama, and had 2 sons. She was also married to 37-year-old Ricky McCrae, and they had been married for some time. Their marriage had a lot of happiness and love, but it also had periods of strain and conflict. On July 13th of 2024, the couple was at a McDonald's drive-thru. Stephanie was driving and Ricky was in the passenger side. An argument started between the two, and workers at the McDonald's could hear the argument through the intercom system. As Stephanie reached the pickup window after placing her order, she told the employee to please call the police because her husband had a gun. Ricky, who was in a fit of rage, shot Stephanie 3 times in that drive-thru line, killing her instantly. The gunfire was heard by the employees, and they closed the drive-thru window immediately and fled for their safety. Once Ricky had shot Stephanie, he fled on foot. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses had captured a man fitting the description of Ricky running away from a McDonald's wearing red shorts and a white tank top. Ricky was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife. Police say that the two were in an off-again, on-again relationship, and they had just discussed the relationship before the incident. Ricky claims he is not guilty and he was home the whole time and it wasn't him. As of right now, Ricky remains in custody awaiting further court proceedings.
Unbelievable stories that sound fake but are 100% real. This is Henry Tandy, and he was the most decorated British soldier during World War I, meaning he had the most medals and honors, but that's not why he's remembered today. On a fall day in 1918, Henry was propped up on a war trench just like this when scanning the battlefield before the day came to an end. When he suddenly noticed a shadowy figure walking towards him through the mist, he immediately grabbed his rifle because he wasn't sure if this guy was on his side or the enemy's. But as the figure got closer, Henry realized that this guy was severely wounded and he had a German uniform on, meaning he was indeed the enemy. The wounded soldier had no weapon and just kept slowly walking towards Henry, not realizing the danger he had just gotten himself into. But as the German realized what was about to happen, he didn't try to run away, he just stood there and accepted his fate. Henry couldn't find the strength to shoot this guy, so he let him go. That soldier was Adolf Hitler.
Fun fact, this animal started my career. No, like actually, the first animal video I ever made was because I seen this crash out Clydesdale Dwarfle car and I couldn't stay silent. So in honor of that, here's the top 5 BTYT animals. Bigger than you think. Moose are built like a bad joke. They're not slightly bigger deer, they're slightly smaller elephants. Fun fact, only animal where swerving and praying to RNGesus is safer than hitting Bullwinkle with your car, because if you hit their legs, that's about 1,400 pounds of moose coming through your windshield. That's if you see them, because moose are so tall, your headlights won't even reach high enough to give their eyes away. Stay woke to the moosaya. I feel like people think wolves are just slightly bigger unhinged huskies, and I think so did this husky, till he found out. As big as you think wolves are, I promise you they're bigger, and we turned that into a beagle. Saltwater crocodiles are a massive middle finger to everyone's way of life. Up to and over 20 feet and 2,000 plus pounds worth of predator. They also have the strongest recorded bite force of any animal at 3,700 psi. A grizzly is like 1,200 and they could obliterate a bowling ball. Swans are literally everything geese grow up thinking they are. It's called a mute swan because there are no words for how egregiously foul this Q-tip dinosaur is. Look up swan song. It's named after the fact that it's the last thing you'll hear while in the present tense. My sources I made that but like they do have a human body count. And lastly, wombats put the W in wombo and WTF. It's built like a boulder. That's not even a joke. They life retire predators by throwing it back. And I won't be elaborating on that, the more you know.
Morbid Facts, Part 474. Known as the girl who can't feel pain, Ashlyn Blocker was born with a congenital insensitivity to pain, a rare condition characterized by her body's inability to experience physical pain. While it may sound like a superpower, this condition has left Ashlyn without the natural warning signals that typically alert people to danger. From a young age, she accidentally injured herself countless times, forcing her parents to be constantly vigilant to prevent serious harm. In one case, she ran on a badly fractured ankle for several days before her parents finally realized that something was wrong. Here's a 1955 photo of actor James Dean pretending to sleep inside of an open casket at a furniture store in Indiana. After a fatal car crash just 7 months later, Dean would end up laying in a casket permanently. Martin Luther King Jr.'s mother, Alberta, was also murdered 6 years after her son was assassinated. She was shot and killed by a 23-year-old black man who thought that black civil rights activists and ministers were evil. The man yelled, "You are serving a false god," and shot Alberta King with 2 handguns while she was playing an organ during a church service in Atlanta.
Because everyone's talking about the possible serial killer in Grand Junction, Colorado, let me tell you about one of their most infamous murder cases. The Blaggs were a picture-perfect family of born-again Christians until November 13th, 2001, when Michael came home to a pool of blood, his wife Jennifer and 6-year-old daughter Abby missing. The back door was left open, Jennifer's purse was spilled out on the floor, and her jewelry was missing. But when authorities looked at the crime scene, something was off. If a stranger had broken into their home, why would they leave items of value behind, like guns and cash? And why would they move the bodies in Jennifer's van and return it to the family's garage? In May the following year, investigators start digging through the Mesa County landfill, and after removing 3,000 tons of trash, they find the mummified remains of Jennifer Blagg, wrapped in a tent and surrounded by trash from her husband's workplace. Michael was convicted for only his wife's murder in 2004, but 13 years later he got a second shot at freedom. It turns out a juror lied on her questionnaire about being a victim of DV. In 2018 he got the same result, life in prison without the possibility of parole. And despite being convicted twice, he refuses to reveal the location of his 6-year-old daughter Abby. It's believed her remains are still deep in the Mesa County landfill.
How long you would survive in these places. Inside a refrigerator, 10 days. In the middle of the ocean, 3 days. Inside a freezer, 4 hours. In a microwave, 15 seconds. Black hole, instant death.
I want
want to talk about what makes this picture so terrifying. The woman that you're looking at is Samantha Trey, and she went missing in June of 2016. For some context, this was the apartment building that she was reported missing from. When her friends could not get in touch with her, a police search commenced. One of the first things that they noticed when they got into the apartment was that her laptop had been almost entirely destroyed. You know, like, it was very clear that somebody had deliberately tried to ruin this computer and whatever was on it. Investigators were still able to get into that computer, which is where they found this final webcam photo that was taken. Something they found very disturbing, and clearly she looks like she's in distress, but what's in the background is what really unnerved them. When they increased the brightness, an unknown man could be seen behind her in the room, which they believe she was very clearly aware of. Samantha was never found, and this man was never identified. If you do want to catch more creepy stories, make sure to go check them out on my show, The Sinister.
Was Buddha considered a Christian saint? The Eastern Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church both honor two saints named Balaam and Josaphat. On closer inspection, the story of this Indian prince, Josaphat, appears strikingly similar to the life of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. But how did this come to be? Well, the story originates from an early Christian adaptation of Siddhartha Gautama's life. As Buddhism traveled through Central Asia, its teachings spread along the trade routes to the Middle East. Here it was adapted into other belief systems like Manichaeism. In the 8th century, Islamic scholars translated a Buddha biography into Arabic as Kitab Bilawar wa Buddhasaf, which means the Book of Bilawar and Buddhasaf. By the 11th century, it was translated into Greek, where it became known as Balaam and Josaphat. This adaptation recast the Buddha story into a Christian moral tale, with Josaphat as a prince who renounces wealth after guidance from Balaam, a Christian hermit. This version aligned with the Christian teachings on renunciation and devotion.
Rating whether or not I could survive these traps from Saw X. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so comment down below what movie I should do next. Starting with the pipe bomb trap. Now I'm gonna be honest, if I woke up with scalpels as my hands and 2 live pipe bombs attached to my wrists, bro, I'm getting in the fetal position. Because what my man had to do here was absolutely insane. There's no humanly possible way I'm doing that. You then go over to the eye suck trap. Now I'm gonna be honest, if I could break all of my fingers at once, just click it all the way to 5 and call it a day, then I'm surviving. But the fact that you have to do it individually, finger by finger, I'm done. You guys know the bone marrow trap, and I'm gonna be honest, when I saw this in the movie, it might have been one of the most gross things I've ever seen. Not even the first part, but the second part. What she has to collect. I for some reason still have this massive theory that if I don't have to play the tape, then I should survive, because then the timer doesn't start. Am I right? You then have the brain surgery trap, bro. Close that mask and cook me. There's no humanly possible way I'm doing that trap. Like I said, I think if I don't play the tape, then I should be fine. I mean, I'm not gonna survive either way. It'll probably be less painful. You then have one of the easiest traps in this movie, man, the radiation trap. You have to break your wrist and your ankle. I know that sounds painful, but the alternative is absolutely awful. I'm surviving that 100%. You then have the waterboarding trap, which as long as your teammate is not trying to unalive you, you should be good. You then have the gas trap. There is one porthole, and if you are stuck in there with me, bro, you are not surviving. Like and follow for more. And barely lost? That just goes to show that Slenderman is not that strong. Yes, it's a creepypasta. Yes, it is made into a movie, and is the movie good? No. But in all honesty, I don't think Slenderman matches up with any of the horror movie characters. So Slenderman versus Jason, he's getting packed up. Slenderman versus Freddy, also getting packed up very easily. I know I'm yapping here, but I don't even think Slenderman's beating Leatherface. Leatherface is just a normal person. Like and follow for more.
10 quick facts that could save your life. Don't repair your own microwave. They can hold electrical currents even when unplugged. If you're ever impaled by something, leave the object in place and go to the hospital rather than trying to pull it out yourself. If you're choking, make sure people know. Don't panic and just walk away. If you have a fire in a pan on the stove, cover it with a lid or towel. Don't eat snow for hydration. The energy that's required from your body to melt the snow will actually dehydrate you even more. If you think you're having a heart attack, you should chew aspirin instead of swallowing it. If you're ever in a falling elevator, laying down flat and covering your face is your best bet for survival. A wagging tail does not always mean that a dog is happy. Dogs also wag their tail when they're fearful or as a warning. Never approach a horse from behind. If a tornado doesn't look like it's moving left or right, it's most likely moving towards you.
Six days ago, I posted a video listing 8 horrifying facts about jinns. Number 2 from that list caught many viewers' attention. Let's have a look at that clip. Number 2. Mythical creatures that we see in movies, such as dragons, mermaids, goblins, and trolls, are inspired by supernatural beings. The jinns of the sky, the jinns of the sea, the jinns of the mountains, and the jinns of the caves. For hundreds of years, mythical creatures were always inspired by supernatural beings. Let's use mermaids as an example. In urban legends, mermaids are known to be sea creatures that lure sailors to their death by their enchanting voice. They are not as innocent and friendly as how movies make them seem. This is the only real video available online that could maybe prove a being of what seems to be a mermaid.
We got another one over here? What are those? What the fuck's going on? On each side of the boat? What are those trails called? What's something swimming fast underneath that water? Something swimming real fast underneath that water. I hear him. Where's he at? What the fuck is that noise, bro? What is that noise? Where are you?
Let's not forget the importance of oceans and the world of jinns. The most protected area in their whole world is on water. The throne of Iblis is on water. But the main question is, are these shape-shifting jinns, half humanoids, half fish, or do mermaids actually exist? Only God knows the answer.
She drove home with a man in her windshield and never called for help. 37-year-old Greg Biggs was someone who wanted to rebuild his life. He was living in a homeless shelter but worked as a self-employed bricklayer, hoping for a better life. Greg was a devoted father to his 18-year-old son Brandon, and even though they couldn't live together, they still had a very strong bond. Greg was such a kind-hearted person. He had met this woman, fell in love with her, and she had nothing, but he gave her all of his money and she left him. Because of this, he lost his house, he lost his truck, and this is what led him to become homeless. And that just shows you what kind of guy Greg was. On October 25th of 2001, 25-year-old Shantae Mallard, who was a nursing assistant, showed up at her friend's apartment in Fort Worth, Texas, and this friend went by the name T. Fry. Shantae appeared to be a responsible and caring individual, but whenever her and T. Fry would get together, they would show their partying lifestyle and just be wild and rebellious. That evening, the two smoked and drank before heading to a local nightclub, and the plan was for Shantae to meet this guy named Cleet Jackson, who she was really liking, and just have a fun night out. Once they were at the club, the smoking and drinking continued, and it seems like they were having a great night. However, that was until Cleet abandoned Shantae for another woman, which made her very upset. When 2 a.m. rolled around, the club was preparing to shut down, and Shantae and T. Fry decided to leave. Shantae, who was heavily intoxicated, was going to drive herself home, but T. Fry, who was not as intoxicated, told her that she would follow her home to make sure that she got home safe. Shantae told her no, it was okay, that she would be fine. Around 3:30 a.m. when Shantae was driving home, she hit Greg Biggs, who was walking on the sidewalk. It was so bad that Greg's body went through the windshield and he was partially lodged in the car. Despite suffering severe injuries, including an almost amputated leg, he was still alive and conscious. There was blood splatter inside of the car, and even his handprints were on the passenger side door, showing that he was trying to get out. Instead of Shantae stopping the car to help Greg or call for help, she just kept driving home. She passed by a fire station, a hospital, several payphones, and she still continued to drive home with Greg in her windshield. Once Shantae arrived home, she parked the car in the garage, turned off the lights, shut the garage door, leaving Greg in complete darkness, and he was just moaning in pain. About an hour later, Shantae called her friend T. Fry, crying on the phone, asking her to come over. When she arrived at her home, she directed her to the garage, and that is when she saw Greg's bloodied body still in the windshield. But of course, instead of calling for help, they turned off the lights and left him there to die. After that, they drove to T. Fry's apartment to go to sleep, and the next morning they drove back to Shantae's house, and that is when they found Greg motionless. Realizing that Greg was now gone, Shantae had called Cleet, asking for him to dispose of his body. Cleet, who was already on parole, was furious about being asked to do this, but he did it anyways. He and his cousin Tyrone went to Shantae's house. They took Greg's body out of the windshield, put it in a rug, took it to a park, and left his body on a bench. They wanted to leave Greg's body in a public place so that his family could find it and bury him. The next morning, 2 men who were at that park discovered Greg's body and contacted police. Greg's case went cold for several months until February of 2002 when a tip came forward from a woman named Miranda Daniel who was familiar with Shantae and told them what had happened that night. Police went to search Shantae's garage, and even though several months had passed by, her car's windshield was still shattered and there was still blood inside. Shantae was convicted of murder and sentenced to 50 years in prison but will be eligible for parole in 2027. As for Cleet and Tyrone, they got a sentence of 10 and 9 years.